Welcome back to the Unanimous Decision Podcast. I'm your host, DPalm. Follow me on Twitter at DPalm66. You can follow the show on Twitter at UDPod. You can follow the entire MTR Network at the MTR Network. It's the best place for you to get all the latest news and opinions on politics, sports, comic books, gaming, movies, TV, everything you could ever want under the sun, all the content you could ever possibly need. Now that you've found the UD Pod on iTunes, make sure you don't lose us. Subscribe to the UD Pod specific feed to make sure you get all the latest things as soon as they drop. The main feed gets backlogged sometimes. Sometimes I'll drop a special pod in the middle of the week. Subscribe to this feed. You won't miss one. Now, you're taking that 2 seconds to subscribe. Take another 3 seconds and leave me a 5-star review in the iTunes store. What does that do? Well, it's kind of a win-win because you get to have anything you want said on the air, read on the air. Whatever you wanted me to say, good, bad, ugly, whatever, I will read it with the 5-star review policy. Also, it helps us, lets us know people are listening, lets our advertisers know people are listening. And we've got a brand new review this week. Awesome Sports Podcast from Nut06. Originally heard D-Palm on MTR Network's Character Corner and Super Tuesday Recap, and always loved his feedback on comic books and TV shows and movies with real and honest reviews. He brings the same here with sports as he and different guests discuss things going on in the sports world, from a breakdown of what a team or player may or may not have been going into, during a crazy event, or breaking news. Perfect podcast for any sports lover. Thank you very much for the review. Like I said, you leave a review, it gets right on the air. That's a guarantee. Also, if you've got something else you want to say to us and it won't fit in a review, or you've left a review and you've got something else you want to say to us, hey, you have a recourse. You can email us at udpodcast@gmail.com. I'll read everything that comes in that mailbox. If you guys, I've helped people out, like set up recruiting stuff. I've helped people get their shout out on the show for some of the Black Women shout outs. It's a great way to connect. I've got feedback from there as far as like technical things or things people liked or guests people liked or didn't like. It's been really cool to have that reach out. So we've always got that. Make sure, hey, time of year's coming up. It's crazy. I'm getting married, so I did like the registry thing. And so, I'm very cognizant of Amazon links now. So if you're going to be buying through Amazon for anything, make sure you go through the Amazon affiliate link on mtrnetwork.net. It's no change. The same Amazon has always been, but as opposed to giving Amazon all this extra funds, you're going to give us a little bit to keep everything going, keep the podcast free, keep the podcast going. And in case you want to find a more direct way to assist the podcast, to assist the projects that MTR Network is bringing you, like San Diego Comic-Con this year, like New York Con later this week, make sure you go ahead and subscribe to our premium feed. The premium feed is $8 a month, and it's over 300 additional podcasts. We do record more comic book clubs. We're talking about OK Cupid, the Hello Cupid. We just recorded a Wonder Woman spoiled review that's going to be a note on the premium feed. It's a lot of bang for your buck. And there's another way you can help out the MTR Network. We recently launched our store.mtrnetwork.net. Get yourself, if you love the MTR Network, say it with your chest in a fashionable t-shirt or maybe a tasteful drinking mug. I bought myself a mug. I bought myself a couple shirts. I'm excited. We got a store, y'all. It feels something like a big deal. I'm proud of us. I'm happy that we gave to share this with y'all, and I'm looking forward to seeing some merch at New York Con later this week. That's all I had to do. That's all I had to promo. Let's get right into it. Today's guest, you know him probably from his Twitter account and probably the best line play breakdowns on the internet. In case you're older like me, you've known him from Tennessee and that damn Rocket Talk song, which we're going to talk about. We also know him from Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Stephen White, SG Nation, from SB Nation. Follow him on Twitter, SGW94. What's up, Steve?
Hey, how's it going?
Man, it's going great, man. Thank you for coming on with us today, man.
I appreciate you having me.
Man, I got to say, it's wild because having watched, because I'm a Georgia fan. I mean, I'm very naked about that, and you play at Tennessee, and I feel the way I feel about that. I got to ask, watching from when you played to today, how much has football culture really just taken? It's way different from when I played, and my last year was 2007, so what is it like watching it from afar, kind of watching the game evolve?
It's weird because I feel like I'm the old guy yelling, "Get off my lawn!" Now, maybe I'm behind the times, but just, I have to watch a lot of this film because I do prospect breakdowns in the off season leading into the draft, and it's not like what I did. Like on either side, you think about it from the perspective of the offense usually. Oh, they're going to more of these spread concepts and read option and stuff like that. But them going to those kind of things also affects the way the defense, lines up and plays. You'll have a game where the left tackle hardly ever has a one-on-one pass block against a defensive end.
Right.
But conversely, the defensive end isn't showing what he could do against the left tackle either. He's having to try to rush against, a running back or something. So just overall, it's evolving, and I don't necessarily like the direction it's going, but it doesn't really matter because it's going that way anyway.
Right. So I used to have to do the kind of things you do, like evaluate prospects. Do you think it's getting harder because of the larger differentiation between the college game and the pro game? You mentioned some of the things like with the left tackles, but even like the skill sets that you're seeing applied in college, they're not necessarily preparing you for the NFL, because those changes, frankly, because the talent level isn't that much different in the NFL, the big gimmicky offenses don't really have to come to the NFL.
Yeah, it makes you wary. I'll put it that way. When you have a left tackle who looks talented but doesn't really ever have to pass block a top defensive end one-on-one, you start getting nervous about that guy because Greg Robinson exists. Greg Robinson just was a physical beast in every category. I think he did 225 over 30 times, and then he, runs a good 40 time, all these other different things. And you see it on film. They got him out there pulling and taking on cornerbacks and stuff. But then he got to the pros, he actually had to pass block somebody, and it didn't go so well. It hasn't been going so well for him. So that was one of the guys who changed my thoughts about evaluating college left tackles, because I was very high on him coming out. I blew it. I 100% blew it with him, because I just assumed that if you see this guy going up on the second level on run blocks and stuff like that and looking good out in space, that he would figure it out as a pass blocker, and it just hasn't been the case.
I think it's wild because I was talking to one of my old teammates at my bachelor party a couple weeks ago, and for some reason, because we're who we are, we end up talking about football. I think we'll never see an Orlando Pace in our lifetime again, which is kind of weird. And of course, Orlando Pace is generational talent, but I'm talking about a guy whose direct domination on the collegiate level translated as a 1-to-1 to the NFL.
It just depends. I mean, it'll probably be a guy who plays at like Alabama or something, right? One of the few teams that's still kind of holding on to old school football, even as they incorporate some of this, high tempo spread offense. So I don't know, man. Look, I was really high on Ronnie Stanley last year, and he had a pretty good rookie year until he hurt his foot. So he actually did. He was one of those rare college tackles that did have to do a lot of one-on-one blocking. And so you got to see him, the things he was good at and the things that he might need to work on. And so I don't know about, like you said, about like an Orlando Pace coming out nowadays, just because most teams aren't going to ask them to do what Orlando Pace had to do in college.
Right, that makes perfect sense. So your recruitment going high school to college was a bit ago, and mine was not as far. But even you've watched it turn into what it's become. It's become a $1 million cottage industry around the evaluation of high school talent. It's so weird because now I feel like more than ever people feel like they have a definitive grasp on these recruits, but at the same time I feel like it's almost, is it a sustainable industry because there's no way to cover the country because there's so much football?
I don't know. I really, it's hard to say. I'm not really enmeshed in recruiting like that. Obviously, I pay attention to the guys we recruit and stuff like that, and around the SEC. But just, man, it's kind of amazing how this thing has gone down. Now you got the opening and all that, all these different camps and stuff, and you get to see these guys do some underwear football a lot of times, and look, some colleges are offering kids off of these camps and stuff. And so it's not like you can dismiss it. what they're doing because they really are getting these kids more opportunities than per se I had back when I was coming out. I didn't really have.
So I graduated in 03, and so I guess going into my junior year, I did the Bowden camp. And there were coaches there, and I got 2 offers off of that camp. I got to say,
we didn't really have camps like that when I was coming out.
Right, and now it's not just camps; it's like televised camps. Like I got a FAMU offer off of my week at Bowden. These kids now, there's a circuit.
Yeah,
you kind of have to hit to be touted as one of these top recruits, and it's just crazy to watch it come up because it feels like, and now I feel like the old dude yelling, "Get off my lawn!" It feels like it came out of nowhere overnight. Like all of a sudden, like on one level, yeah, people were like, "Have you seen Allen Iverson's football highlight cut up?" Like that was kind of like the joking holy grail when I was in college. Now it's like, oh, these kids are on Huddle, these kids are on they've built this industry out of nothing. Just covering these 16, 17, 18-year-old kids.
Well, there's another side to this, too, when you think about it. Head coaching salaries have kind of skyrocketed as well. And so now, guys are really trying a lot harder to hold on to their jobs than maybe they did in the past. They make this kind of money. And the pressure is now more, it's on head coaches more than it's ever been as well. And so now they're trying to find every diamond in the rough that they can. Look, Nick Saban was, dead set against all these satellite camps and stuff last year, right? Then earlier this week, I saw a report that he's at a satellite camp, right? It's almost like the industry, I don't know whether it's a chicken or an egg, what came first type situation, because it's kind of like they're feeding off each other. These coaches can't allow anybody else to upstage them. So even the Nick Sabans of the world have to go to these things, right? But then, for the high school players, they're having more and more ways to reach out and show people what they can do across the country, whereas they probably wouldn't without these camps. I just wonder how much of it is legit, though. Because look, the whole star system, I've always thought was suspect to begin with. But now you got these kids getting stars off of camps when they're in T-shirt and shorts. Something about that doesn't sit right with me.
No, I agree, man. I agree. It's almost, you're right. It's wild because football was very much unlike basketball in that there was no real buffer between the game film and recruitment. And basketball always felt like that with AAU stuff and off-season stuff and camps and stuff. And it always felt like football had that gap didn't really exist. But at some point in the last, it's got to be 15 years because it wasn't a thing when I was recruited. Really, the last 15 years, someone found that space and said, oh, let's fill this space with stars and gaps and magazines and cottage industries. And let's base coaching incentives on recruiting class rankings. And the question now becomes, are our coaches here to teach our players to get ready for the next level or get ready for Saturdays at the very least, or are they here because they're recruiters?
Right. And that is a very good question. Because there's a lot of guys who out here getting talked up, coaches, well, this guy's a really up-and-comer, right? And I always judge coaches off of their product. Like, if you coach linebackers, let me see your linebackers is making All-American and making plays in the backfield and stuff. Yeah. And if they're not, then I start wondering, like, okay, what is it about this guy that makes him an up-and-comer? Because it ain't his film. It ain't his players. So what is it? And ultimately, what you find out is a lot of these guys get jobs because they can recruit rather than what they know and how they can pass it on to players. And I guess they just feel like, well, if we get good enough players, they won't need a whole lot of coaching. But I'm not sure if I buy into that.
Yeah, you're 100% right. That's the wildest thing in the world. It's the other thing where people say, oh, not to point to too fine of a point on, but let's say a Kirby Smart. Say, oh, he's a great position coach. Now he's going to be a great head coach. And I'm like, those are different jobs. The skill set might not translate from position coach to CEO. And we'll see what happens with Coach Smart, but the returns, like not many of these Saban disciples do well on their own because they end up trying to be a Nick Saban cover band.
Right, and that's the worst thing in the world you can do. When a guy has a successful coaching tree, normally he empowers his coaches to be themselves, and then they can go off and be themselves and do things their own way. I think about Coach Dungy's coaching tree, and you couldn't have personalities any different from a guy like maybe Herman Edwards and a guy like when he was a head coach in Detroit, Coach Marinelli. Just two totally different types of personalities, but they didn't try to be Coach Dungy. Now, they didn't necessarily reach Coach Dungy's height either, but, you can't be Belichick. You can't be you can't be a Nick Saban. You have to be your own man because players, one thing about most players I know, they can sniff out a phony real fast. Like if they can tell it if you're genuine, if you're really a hard ass, or if you're a guy who's just playing at it. And if you're a guy that's just playing at it, they're going to spit you up. They're going to chew you up and spit you out real fast. So, I just feel like some of these guys, like you said, it's a different deal going from a position coach or really even sometimes being a coordinator and running the whole show just because now you have to balance out, both sides of the football and special teams. Whereas before, you could be like a us against them type of mentality until we actually play on Saturday. So, I just feel like the guys who are confident enough in their own abilities that even if they were under a great coach like Saban, still want to do things their own way are the guys who probably have the best chance of success. Now, some guys just aren't good anyway, so they're not going to succeed regardless. But at least go out doing it your own way. That's kind of my mentality on the whole thing.
Right. Well, you were drafted in '96. You ended up playing 7 years in the league. I can speak to, I think I've spoken to, and a lot of my friends, people on the podcast have spoken to, kind of that jump from high school to college, how it's bigger than people advertise it. What's that jump from big-time Tennessee football to the NFL? How was that? Was there a moment that was your welcome to the NFL moment?
I wouldn't say that. It just so happened I got drafted by the Eagles, and then they cut me during their training camp. Now, they tried to move me to linebacker, like legit off the ball, 4-3 outside linebacker. Whereas I hadn't played linebacker since like my freshman year of college when I redshirted. So I was like a fish out of water, and so everything was kind of like a welcome to the NFL moment because I was playing out of position, you know what I mean?
Right.
But then when I went down to Tampa, it just so happened that Tampa had drafted Florida's left tackle, Jeff Odom, a guy who I had beaten that year several times. I didn't quite get a sack, but I was beating him like a drum, even though we ended up getting smoked in that game. So I wasn't, it's one of those deals where, okay, well, I'm used to going against you anyway. And so we went at it every day in practice. He got me some, I got him some. But now, as far as like when I was on a positive note of welcome to the NFL moment, like the first time I really got playing time, we played against New Orleans. And I was a spin move guy. I love doing a spin move. And so everybody in practice had seen me do my spin move, whatever. So when I finally got in the game, it was late in the game against New Orleans, and this was back when they were terrible. And everybody was like waiting for me to do the spin move. And I did the spin move and got a hurry. And I was like, kind of like I was actually a part of the team then. Right. You know what I mean? So, like, before that, I was just, a scout team guy. First 6 weeks I spent on the practice squad, and I hadn't been with them for training camp where most teams bond in the first place. So, they were kind of getting to know me, and I wasn't a very gregarious person anyway. I was pretty much very to myself anyway, so I wasn't really putting myself out there for them to get to know me. But still, just that one moment, I come off the field and everybody's hugging me and stuff. I'm like, yeah, I'm actually in the NFL now.
That's awesome. That's a good welcome to the NFL story, man. That's really a great one. What so like you said, you played 7 years in the league, got the amazing experience of being in the NFL. How'd you hook up with SB Nation and start writing these draft profiles? Because that's what I really want to talk about. Because like watching you write and talk about line play, like I played O-line in college. I was recruited actually. I played my freshman year as D tackle, and then they needed depth on the O-line. And they said, "Would you be willing to move? Get a chance to play soon?" And I was like, "I'll give it a shot, whatever." And that was the summer, the spring I spent playing center, which no one speaks about now. It was the great center experiment was not a good one. I'm not gonna lie. I tried, but it's hard to block with one hand.
That's all you can. All you can do is try.
All you can do is try. But like, how'd you end up linking up with SB Nation?
So I was really into the Tampa Bay Bucks. After I finished playing, I was just still into them and supporting them and everything. And so I first started off writing a little personal blog. I just started, I didn't feel like people really knew what they were talking about when they talked about this team. So I would go in and kind of, just explain stuff. And so then I ended up a local, I'm not even sure what you would call them, Joe Bucks fan, a local, there are two guys, so there's two bloggers, asked me to blog for them a little bit. And so I did, and it went pretty well. And so then Bleacher Report reached out to me, and they asked me to write for them. I was writing for the guys here locally for free. Bleacher Report, asked me to write for them for like $500 a month. Like, cool, it's a good way to just try it out. But it didn't go very well. Like, it just wasn't a good fit for me. Right. Because I like writing in my own voice and doing things my own way. And then after that, I guess Spencer over at SB Nation, we followed each other for a long time, and he'd seen me talk about football and stuff on Twitter, and he reached out and was like, we don't really want to change your voice, we want to amplify it. And they've been great to me ever since then. They've been very supportive, very helpful, and true to their word. They've let me basically write in my own voice and not do it, all dry. I felt like most of the stuff I was reading about football was very dry and very, everybody tried to use the same language. Right. And most of it was kind of PG language. And I just feel like, I feel like when you talk about football, and you almost have to curse. It's that kind of sport. It's a violent sport, and things happen. And even off the field, certain things just require a little bit of an exclamation point. And so they said I could do that too. I was like, are you kidding me? I couldn't get any better than this. And y'all gonna pay me to do this? And so it's been great, man. I really couldn't have chosen a better company to work for.
Well, honestly, and I'm being kind of selfish here because I feel like you write for me. Like, you write in a way for people who understand and can, like, break down line play to really get it. Is there ever been, like, a point where you thought, like, maybe I should almost dumb down some of the football talk?
I try to write in such a way that a novice or a passing football fan can understand it, but not so dumbed down that a guy like you will be like, okay, this is too tedious. Right. You know what I mean? And so I try to walk that fine line, to be honest with you, because I do want to grab the casual fan, the person that's afraid to ask questions.
Right.
They're at the bar and everybody else knows what's going on, and they don't, but they just, they don't want everybody to laugh at them and stuff. I want to be kind of like an outlet for them. So, hey, just on their own time, at their own pace, they can learn about the game and become more knowledgeable, because ultimately what I want is everybody that watches football and enjoys football to actually understand what's going on. So I think smarter fans make everything about football better. Amen. When I don't have to answer stupid questions, I have pretty good days. It's so many people ask me stuff that they should know, in my opinion, that I get a little irritated. And so, especially when they try to challenge me, it's not so much they're asking, they're trying to tell me something. And I'm like, get out of here, dummy. So I don't want to exclude those people. I think a lot of times, for instance, when you look at draft breakdowns, and they're just full of all this, NFL jargon that guys like us obviously recognize, but novices probably have no idea what they're talking about. And I don't want to be that. I want to be something that's entertaining. I want to give you something that can inform you if you don't already know, but something that also is on a level where people who do know are kind of like, yeah, man, this is kind of how, like you said, this is kind of how I would have written this.
It's wild because even reading so obviously I'm a Falcons fan, but Tack McKinney piece, I was like, everything you pointed out, I was like, yep. Because I only got to watch, I think, the Utah game and one other one, just some cuts of him. His feet stopped on the second move. And it was something you pointed out in all your feet. And then you're like, look, he when he has a clear line or one-on-one, he wins sometimes. But it was something that just to see someone else write it and like make it make sense, it gave me hope because you see it on Twitter during football season. People will just, the statements. Like I'm not saying there should be a football literacy test. But
yeah,
maybe there should. Like if you can't.
Right, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I really wouldn't be opposed to it. I feel like we should have like a purple check or something, like a separate check on Twitter that you have to pass a test to be calling yourself an NFL analyst because you just see like, and my thing is this, really, and I'm sure we'll get to this later, until this Kaepernick still jumped off, I had avoided like calling people out as much as I could. Like if somebody tried to call me out or ask me a question, I'll be honest with them. But if I saw something floating down my timeline that was absolutely wrong, I would just keep scrolling most of the time. It's just not like I'm so tired of all the arguing and stuff on Twitter that I usually try to avoid it. But man, I'm talking about I'll be scrolling through and see some stuff and my eyes would just bug out. I'm like, oh, I want to respond so bad. I want to say something because this is so wrong.
The best part is when I see people come at you like, what do linemen know about? What do people who know about line play know about coverages? And I'm just like, like everything offensive line does is predicated on coverage, right? Like that's like thing one when I'm walking to the line. Like I'm looking at where safeties are. Like what are you talking about? It's they don't get it. Like they don't get how much the line depends on knowing everything that's happening on the field.
Right. I'm telling you, listen,
both sides of the ball. Like you need to
both sides of the ball.
You didn't know the strength of the formation. You didn't know where the receivers are. You didn't know. Yo.
That story about Bret Favre not knowing what nickel was.
The funniest shit in the world.
Listen, it's funny, but I swear to God, it doesn't surprise me at all. Because half the time, man, these quarterbacks don't be knowing as much as people think they do.
No.
I've heard quarterbacks try to explain what the defense was trying to do. I just had to just like almost hold my hand over my mouth because I'm like, no, it's not actually what we're trying to do. I mean, it ends up working out for them the same, but they have no idea what the actual aim is of the defense half the time. We have to know what the offense is trying to do to us, so we won't let them do it. Like when for instance, when offense runs basically a high-low route, they want you to jump the short route, so it opens up the deep one, right? We have to know what they're trying to do. Most of the time, quarterbacks don't have to know what we're trying to do. We're probably like, they just change the linebacker for it. No, it's way more to it than that, Brett. It's not just that they change the personnel. They're going to run different things out of their different personnel, too. Whole different tendencies most of the time. From nickel to base to down, whatever, right? And we have to know, if they go to one back, what the tendencies is versus two back offset or, empty set. We have to know the difference between all those things and the tendencies. The quarterback is just like, they got one safety in the box. Right, they got one safety in the box. Okay, here we go. Come on, man. Come on. I've been wanting to say this for a long time, but they're trying to make it like we dumb and quarterbacks with these geniuses. I know too many quarterbacks. I'm just saying, I know too many quarterbacks. They ain't gonna just keep saying.
I knew what to say to get the lineman to talk. I was like, I just gotta say, I should set him up. He'll take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, man. Listen.
No, you're right. It's It's the wildest shit in the world because people assume the quarterbacks know everything. I'm like, no.
Nope.
You know
what a safety is.
Ask your running back what they do on what play, and they will tell you whose hip they watch. That's it.
I promise. Look, wide receivers is the worst though. They don't have any. Man, listen.
Yo, it's a true ass story from practice. Probably had to be junior or sophomore year. We're doing a 2-minute drill, and I'm running with the twos, and our one of our receivers, Jeff. The call comes in, and he don't move. And we yelled at, throw out the field, whatever. End of the drill. I go, Jeff, man, why didn't you move? He goes, well, the route. He says the route combo. I go, okay. So he goes, first of all, I don't know what that means. Second of all, I didn't know if I was X or Z. So I just stood there. And I was like, well, it's like week 3. I'm like,
but that is typical wide receiver talk right there. Like,
that's a receiver man.
Anybody that's been on the actual team is not surprised by that at all. Because you probably had a receiver on your team do something very similar.
Oh.
Go out there and have no idea which side they supposed to go to and if they supposed to motion or not. So quarterback just stomping their foot and dude's still looking downfield. Like, no, he's talking to you. You supposed to motion.
This other dude, he is legit. Like, he's a Columbia. Like, he's got records. I know him. He's a really good dude. Huge Cornhuskers fan. Travis Jamelka with no kidding. He and the quarterback way off the play. Like, all right, what are you running instead? And it would work, so the coaches wouldn't do anything. But yes, man, receivers, yeah. Linemen know more than you people think, and I'm tired of the exaltation of these skill players just because they do stuff fun for the cameras. I'm tired of it.
Yeah, they gotta get out of here with that.
Give me a pregame analysis with some linemen.
And listen, there's so many guys who would be good at that. Charles Mann is a guy who's very smart and very knowledgeable about football. He should be a much higher profile guy. I don't even know if he's still doing commentating, but I know he was at one time. And it seemed like nobody would hire him. You know what I mean? And I know he knew what he was talking about. You know, it boggles the mind that they have this thing about quarterbacks and even wide receivers now. Wide receivers know absolutely nothing. I mean, nothing. And I'm talking about offense right now. They know nothing about offense. Don't even ask them about defense. They have no clue. They think they know what cover 2 is, but they can't tell you why we running it, where the landmarks are other than the cornerback. None of that. None of it. I'm just telling you.
We're going to get back to more football talk because, hell, if you got Steve White on, you don't not talk about football. But I do want to talk about the NBA Finals. I came out here last episode real disrespectfully and claimed this as LeBronic's season, and I stand by my claims. For 7 years in a row, he's the boss fight of the NBA. He's LeBron James. Game 4, thank you, LeBron, for giving us another day of basketball and allowing me to scrap all these. Are the Warriors the best team ever? Before we move on past this, Steve, I got to ask, because it's coming up everywhere, these Warriors versus the ghost of basketball past.
I mean, I don't.
Where do they line up?
I don't know. First of all, let's see if they're gonna actually win. Because the last time they was up 3-1. The last time they was up 3-1. I'm just saying.
Yo, and in most situations, you'd be like, "We're confident going back home," but everyone in that locker room is nervous.
A lot of crazy stuff been going on this year, man. So I'm just saying, I'm gonna wait on that one. They are obviously a very entertaining team, and if they do, they'll be one of the most talented we've ever seen. But it's all about, I guess, the difference in the era and what was coveted in different eras. Neither one of these teams really have a dominant center, and you seem like you couldn't win in the '80s without a dominant center. And so that's how different. Just from the foundationally, things are just, 30 years later or whatever. So I don't like to do that whole, well, this team would have done that. It's just no way to really know. I just like enjoying, what's put in front of me and watching both of these teams, really get after it. It was really good to see the Cavs come back and win that game because, at that point, people wondered if they had kind of, given up. But they showed some heart and came back there and put up, 86
First
points
half, man.
in the first half?
Yo, 0 half
So,
for them. Like, I got to say, give it up. You're right. They came out, they showed out. I'm with you. I think that you can't compare eras like that. I think the best measure of their greatness is the number of teams that are coming out and claiming they kids have taken them. Like, that's how you know you're good. If everyone's like, they ain't that good. That's how you know you really kind of made it. I think you're right about. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I don't even remember like the old school guys doing that when the Lakers were winning titles, right? Like I don't really remember them going at them the way these teams are going after the Golden State now. It's really kind of remarkable to see. Like everybody's mad because
like that for me. That's my game.
Yeah, I mean,
who's getting maddest?
But yeah, I mean, you got a point there. But you know, it is. Look, when you think about the talent they have assembled on their team, you know, they were very talented last year. Then you add Kevin Durant,
MVP at the peak of his powers.
I mean, just imagine if he were. People, it's easy to forget that he started the season off hurt. What if he played the whole season?
It's scary.
And was healthy the whole time. There's no telling what they might have done in the regular season, let alone
the first part of the season figuring out how to fit him in. Like next year they're going to.
And that was, they still have to wait for him to come in.
I'm telling you, it's some scary stuff happening in Golden State. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know where they stack up historically. I think you're right. Like you say about the '80s, you couldn't without a center. I think that talent dictates how the NBA is developing. Like if you look at the early 2000s, everyone had to have a center because Shaq was in the league. Now everyone has to have multiple superstars because LeBron's in the league. Like the talent, the central talent of the league dictates how the league responds. You saw the guard play and the emphasis on large guards occur when Jordan was in the league. Like it just kind of they define their own eras, and I think it's gonna be really interesting to see. Like you said, if the Warriors win, because I have the right to ask. I have the right to ask the question after last year, and we'll see how it all pans out. I'm openly cheering for the Cavs. I just think that it would be, you thought 3-1 jokes were bad. 3-0 jokes, whoo. We will talk about these Warriors forever if some bad things happen. Let's go back to college football, Ole Miss getting caught up with NCAA. Everyone kind of dancing on Ole Miss's grave. My stance is always to lie to the NCAA. That's, as I've grown, I'm like, no one should tell them the truth about anything. They don't have subpoena power. Go away, NCAA. Is any of this like real? Because it looks like the Ole Miss is already self-sanctioned. They're backing their coach. It feels like if you're going to back the coach early, unless more comes out, you got to stick with the coach. Is this the end of the story, or is this going to be one of those ones that keeps popping up like the UNC cheating?
Yeah, see, here's the problem. They backed the head coach by throwing one of the assistant coaches under the bus.
Good point.
And that assistant coach is pissed. And that usually does not work out well for the program. Because you just got to imagine that assistant coaches knows at least where some of the bodies are buried. And every program has skeletons. Every one of them. I'm not even excluding Tennessee. Somewhere, somehow, somebody did something wrong that you don't want the NCAA to know about. And so, to me, I'm not quite sure why they did that. Like, usually if you do that, you get a booster to come around their house and, so a big bag of money just happen to drop off the back of their truck or something, and they keep driving off right in front of the assistant coach's house. Like, you at least got to buy him out, right? If you're gonna fire him and throw him under the bus and make it seem like he was the problem, you got to slip him some bread, up under the table. Because you cannot have, in this kind of situation, a disgruntled employee that's looking for revenge right now, right? And so I've seen the letter from his lawyer. And from that letter, I don't know what he knows. I don't know what he could reveal. But if I was Ole Miss, I'd be very nervous.
They can pay him now. I think this was kind of the setting the price threat.
Yeah, but you know what? See, he almost sound like he at that level where you don't went too far. Like, there ain't no amount of money no more. Because you done messed around.
SEC football. There is always enough money.
Yeah, but listen. There is always enough money, but you're going to have to come correct. Like, you're going to have to knock his socks off now. Because, I mean, dude is hot, right? He said, y'all pulled a swerve on him. Had them represented by the same lawyer all this time. And all of a sudden you look up, they don't even tell you nothing. Just the same, your lawyer, who's also the head coach's lawyer, sends a letter to the NCAA exonerating the head coach and pointing the finger at you. I mean, come on. You know, he at least, he ain't going to take the first offer, I put it that way.
Ole Miss Booster Club, need the top, ante-up time has arrived, my friends.
Listen, I'm just telling you, you don't want him to get up out of the camera.
The discovery portion of this, you don't want to occur. At all. So I don't understand the thinking behind this. So again, if you're going to do dirt, at least know how to do it. At least know what to do when you get caught, how to take care of the person. This is supposed to be a strategy. The thugs in the White House.
Hey, listen, I'm not giving them no advice, but I'm just saying, if you're gonna do dirt, at least know how to do it. At least know how to handle it once you get caught, or else you're gonna make it much worse.
Handling things poorly once you get caught. HBO is moving forward with the Joe Paterno movie starring Al Pacino, and I've heard some supporters of Joe Paterno come out. Some of those Penn State truthers say, "Good, this will be the film that really set the narrative." And my question is, why hire Al Pacino if it's going to be 2 hours of him doing nothing because he didn't know nothing, right?
And that's what has me so worried about this movie, because right now nobody really knows what kind of tone the movie's going to have.
Do nothing.
Right. You either bring him in to make people sympathetic, right? Or you bring him in to be a real jerk and make people hate JoePa even more. And I don't think it's the latter. I just have this really bad feeling that they're going to try to use Al Pacino to get more sympathy for Joe Paterno, because I can't really think of another reason for anybody to make this movie. Like, there's nothing compelling about a dude looking the other way for all those years. But if you make it seem like he didn't know, or you make it seem like he was very, very hurt, like Al Pacino can probably bring out, he just, he was done wrong and he gave his life to the university and all this and that. I'm really nervous about this whole thing, because you know what? As we've seen in recent events, people are very gullible. And if Al Pacino goes out there and gives one hell of a performance, you might have a lot more people, calling for JoePa's statue to be back up and stuff like that. And we don't need that.
No one in the country needs that.
Nobody needs that.
Yeah, and it's crazy because part of the thing that Paterno pushed was this grandfatherly figure, and last week we had another kind of guy who's pushed as a grandfatherly figure, trying to be dirty as shit, as Bill Snyder not only blocked the transfer of Corey Sutton, he then went on, and inexplicably, in 2 minutes on I think it was on a radio show or it captured on a hot mic on a camera, but he said, he implicated the athlete had failed drug tests and pretty much breaking FISA laws. Bill Snyder is just any other coach, isn't he?
I think every coach is just any other coach, really. I mean, I'm just telling you, look, I've been around a lot of coaches on both sides. I did a little bit of coaching after I finished playing too. And I'm just telling you that probably nobody is as good as you think they are. And most of them aren't as bad as you think they are. Some of them are worse.
Yeah.
To be honest with you. There's coaches I've been around who were much worse than anybody had any idea about. And every once in a while, that'll come to a head. And in this situation, I don't know why this kid was the kid that Snyder decided to draw the line in the sand on. I suspect he's done this kind of thing before, because it seemed like it just came real natural to him. But, you come out and first of all, the whole argument itself was just a farce. I mean, you're saying that you want to block the kid, but on the other hand, you say you're a troublemaker. Well, if he's a troublemaker, why don't you let him be somebody else's troublemaker? right? Since you want him off campus as fast as possible, let him go wherever he wants to, as long as it's away from you. If he's this guy who, fails drug tests and is just a bad
Yeah.
dude. But no, you want to keep him. You want to keep him from somebody. Why? According to you, he ain't going to do nothing but go there and be a troublemaker. So, I just feel like we always need to kind of check ourselves when we start lionizing any of these guys, any of them. Because, and some of it is just unfair to them too, because they're human. And, some of us, we have bad moments that nobody ever hears about. So, on the one hand, it's unfair to them to put them on their pedestal in the first place, but it's also a little bit dangerous to elevate any of these coaches in that way. Because, look, as we see with Bill Snyder, who's supposedly this great stand-up guy, all of them can pull this at some point. All of them have the potential to do something like this, which, in the end, they did the right thing and gave the guy his release. But look at all it took to get there. And now everybody knows that the kid failed drug tests, and I'm hoping that he gets some kind of compensation for that.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right, and particularly when you speak about the lionization of coaches, be they just after tenure or as we're seeing this week after retirement, as Bob Stoops' shotgun retirement shocked the college football world. He stepped away from Oklahoma after, I think it was 18 seasons or 17 seasons, 190, 148 national title and 10 Big 12 titles to his name. But in the lionization, a lot's being kind of hand-waved over. The Doyle Green Beckham incident, welcoming back Frank Shannon, Joe Mixon. All these in recent years have to have the equal space in that front line talking about Bob Stoops as all of his on-the-field accomplishments, because these aren't missteps, these aren't mistakes, these are a pattern of moral failings that could say, oh, what if we look at the rest of the years, what else would we find? It's human nature to say, oh, this thing that was the past was the best. But my challenge to, I guess, football media or sports media would be, let's be honest about these figures. Bob Stoops didn't die. He quit a well-paying job. He didn't do anything that would prevent us from saying, hey, he did some really morally beyond questionable things in the same position.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, that's just, we need to be more honest about these guys sometimes. And look, I understand, what it is. We know that a lot of times this media people have personal relationships with these coaches. Maybe they talk to them off the record a lot or what have you. And so they feel the need to vouch for them. But how much do you know anybody who you only really see in a professional setting? You're not going out with Bob Stoops and socially and seeing how he is with his family and stuff. You're talking to him on a Tuesday or whatever their media day is. So it's easy to wear a mask. We all know that. And so, you have all these situations where, it's a guy that everybody will vouch for one day, and all of a sudden they do something crazy the next day, and everybody's like, oh, that's so unlike him. When the truth is, you don't know what he's like in the first place.
You don't know these people.
You just think you do. Right, we just think we do.
100%.
We just think we do.
It's even more glaring
and so,
this alleged era of transparency, because now we think we know them because we see their Twitter. Now it's even like another layer of how much you don't know them.
Exactly. Because who's really tweeting their real self anyway? But, I mean, back to Stoops in particular, that's why it's so important to give all of the details, whether they be good or bad. Because that's the only way to make a fair assessment, right? It's not up to you, the journalist, or you, the radio host or what have you, to decide who Bob Stoops is, provide all the facts that we know about him, and then leave it up to the audience. Because if you say he's a good guy, and you leave out all the bad stuff he does, then that's not a fair representation of him at all. It's just as unfair as if you only focused on the negative, right? So let's just be honest about it. And some people just need to shut up about it, to be honest with you. Some people love vouching for people that they really don't know.
Yeah.
And they know that they don't know.
This dude I've never met.
I'm serious. Every time. Yeah. Oh, he's not like that. How would you know? So let's stop, all that kind of stuff and trying to kind of cover for these guys. You don't have to slam them. Just be fair. Tell the good and the bad, and then let the audience decide.
Yeah. And I'd be remiss if I didn't before you get out of here, man, I got to talk about this because this is the week that the NFL brought back Tank Williams Jr., sending a very specific message to certain people who have to ingest their product on a regular basis. Yet, Colin Kaepernick is still being touted as lots of things. So, you've been kind of at the forefront of this cap fight, and I applaud you for it because you brought the film knowledge. And it's not just you, it's a lot of people who actually watched the film coming out and saying, no, look at the film, these are facts, these are numbers. And I think the biggest tell that it's just bullshit on the other side is that everyone's counter argument keeps changing. This week, or the last 2 weeks, we've now seen the argument be, he's too good to play in Seattle. Steve, what's keeping the NFL from just being honest that we don't like that he spoke out? Is it the threat of the NFLPA? Because I know you're a former member. I have worked with them in the past. My respect levels for the NFLPA are low to very low as far as them as a union.
I don't have that same opinion of them. I'm not saying that they're the greatest thing since sliced bread, but I think there's a lot of times there's context involved. Some of the times they are not living up to what you would like for them to be, but a lot of times they are. And just in general, I think a lot of times we focus so much on the PA, we don't recognize that they work for the players. So, whatever they're empowered to do, the players empowered them to do. And so if the players don't want something to happen, they have the power to stop it. Or if they want something to happen, they have the power to do that too. So, we have to kind of, assign blame all around, so to speak. But on this particular issue, I think that you can, I believe, get sued for collusion. And, you can't just blackball people. And I think that's why they're so, I don't know, they're just kind of not coming out and telling the truth about this. And let me say this. I've told this story before, but the thing about this for me personally, I had no intentions of being some kind of Colin Kaepernick defender this offseason. Like, that wasn't my aim at all. I usually avoid talking about quarterbacks, period, because that's like one of the biggest, topics where people don't know what I won't say that word. But the crap they don't know what the fuck they talking about when it comes to quarterback play. And yeah, I try not to, just assume. But yeah, I mean, that's one of the biggest topics where people don't know what the fuck they're talking about, and they're the loudest voices sometimes. And so I avoided like the plague. What happened is that I don't know if free agency was approaching or what, but he still hadn't been signed. This was like months ago, and we were going to talk about him on our podcast. So I decided to go ahead and watch some of his games. I watch all games every week, but I don't have time to watch the all 22 of every game because it's just not enough time in the world. So I usually watch they have a condensed, or the condensed version that takes you about 30 or 45 minutes to watch it. So I watched all those games, and I remembered that he played well towards the end of the season, but I couldn't quite remember how well or how bad or what he did good and what he did bad. I want to go back and take a deeper dive into it with his all 22. And so I'm like, okay, I just watched, the end of the season, last 3 games. Really and truly, I just look because Those were statistically three of his better games. Obviously, they won one of those games. They played Atlanta, the Rams, and the Seahawks. So that's two really good defense, and the Falcons.
See, we're
but the
doing
Falcons
this for the pod's over, man. I'm about sick of this shit, man. We gonna talk for the pod's over. This has gone on not long enough, bro.
But listen, I'm just saying. Okay, let's be real now.
I know you ain't wrong.
I like
I'm just saying, I gotta see her take it.
Right. Well, I'm just saying. Again, they should have won the Super Bowl though. So performing against them was not an easy task either. So I have no preconceptions going in. I'm just trying to assess him. And what I knew was his 2015 was awful, right? Like he was terrible. Now he wasn't the only one, and obviously they fired that head coach after 1 year. But he was awful. Turns out he was hurt too, which we didn't really know at the time. But he was terrible. Weirdly enough, after the 2015 season, he actually had interest from Denver, who wanted to trade for him, even though he was off for that year. But that was kind of like those are the two competing thoughts in my head. I knew he improved last year, but also knew 2015 was rough. So I really didn't know what to expect. I turned on the tape, I'm watching Atlanta, and like he goes down the first drive, and like even with I think the tight end, their skill position players were awful. I mean, just terrible. Right? Like on the first, like I think like might have been a tight end dropped the touchdown. He comes back, throws it again, gets a touchdown like the first drive. Second drive, same thing. He's going like he's making passes that have always been difficult for him. And then finally, like the little swing passes and stuff, the little short stuff, he's never had real good touch, right? He's always been a guy with four arms away from him, and he's trying to throw the football through you. And so, but he's finally got touch. I'm seeing him make those touch passes. Then I'm seeing him, make the 20-yard skinny post route too. So I'm like, okay, all right, he's looking better. And then finally I'm like, Now the second half of that game, for whatever reason, the 49ers started running the football more, took the football out of his hand, and then they started fumbling. They fumbled and all this kind of crap. So they ended up losing, but it wasn't really on him. So I'm like, he's playing pretty good. What is this shit I'm hearing about him being bad? Like several reporters, most, I say the most prominent one was Albert Breer, kept reporting, and I'm using air quotes right now, reporting that teams were saying that his film was bad from last year. So I'm watching this film against Atlanta. I'm like, okay, this is not bad. This is pretty good. So let me see. Rams game. He's balling. He had one bad throw in that game, ended up being an interception, but he leads them back, goes down and scores the 2-point play to win the game. Team just swarms them like they won a Super Bowl. I'm like, what the fuck? So I'm getting pissed off, right? And the thing of it is, I'm doing this the day of our podcast, right? I've timed it out where I can finish up right before we start the podcast. So then I'm watching the Seahawks game, right? I'm like, okay, we know what the Seahawks defense is all about. They didn't have Earl Thomas at the time, but he lit they ass up. I'm talking about he's making every kind of throw that everybody says he can't make. He was making in that game. Dimes. Still had dude, dropping passes and shit, but they barely end up losing the game. But the 49ers were awful last year. Like, he didn't have much help at all, especially on defense. But he did just about everything you could ask a quarterback to do to win that game. So, that's 3 games in a row. The final 3 games that you get to see of him, he's a much better quarterback than most of the guys I'm seeing getting signed. It must have been after free agency started because our guy Mike Glennon had already signed for all that money with Chicago, and I was already like very, I was happy for Glennon, good for him, but I was laughing. I was literally laughing at the Bears, like, what are y'all doing? But then I know what he is, and I'm looking at Kaepernick's film. I'm like, you trying to tell me you gonna give Mike Glennon this much money and you can't even get this guy a job? So then I'm fire hot, right? And so here comes the podcast. And I let the chopper sing. Yeah, I had to. I was pissed off. Like in that moment, I couldn't believe that people have been trying to basically lie on this kid, word out that he was terrible. Like, why would you do that? Why would you do that? And I was seeing 3 steps ahead. I'm like, the only reason why this will be happening is if he's about to get blackballed. They're trying to turn public opinion against him because who do you remember? You always know the person that comes out first. So if they come out swinging and saying his film was terrible, then all of us who came after that and talked about his film being good, nobody's really listening at that point. I can't tell you how many times people still tweet me and talk about, oh, well, he was terrible last year. No, he wasn't. He had 16 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. That's just statistically, but his film was even better than his statistics, to be honest with you. Listen, so you come to now where I knew this was some bullshit to begin with, because the first initial report said the Seahawks would bring him in for a workout. Like, what? I don't think Geno Smith had to do a workout for the Giants for them to sign him. I don't think E.J. Manuel had to do a workout either. But Colin Kaepernick, you're going to force to do a workout? So I already was smelling bullshit. Then you say, oh, it's him or Austin Davis. Those two things. Listen, I grew up on Sesame Street, and they had this song, one of these kids is doing his own thing. One of these kids is not the same. I mean, those two guys, they aren't in the same universe.
Playing different sports.
As quarterback. So that tells me right there, I'm like, the jig is already up. And sure enough, they signed Austin Davis. But now what do? Now all the people who have they bought every one of these things. Like you went through the list. First was he was bad. Then it was he was asking for too much money. Then it was they weren't sure if he wanted to play. He was evading. Now he's too good, right? And curiously enough, some people have bought every single one of those excuses, right? Every single one of them. So now that he's too good, it's funny to see them backtrack now. You're like, oh, well, yeah, we didn't say he was that bad. It's amazing. These people want to believe, that the NFL is not blackballing him. So now Seattle bringing him in to them gives them the opportunity to say, oh, see, he's not getting blackballed. He got a chance. Seattle just decided to go in a different direction. But it's all bullshit. All of this direction. There's so many teams that the fan base should be livid that they haven't signed Colin Kaepernick. I don't know what New York Jets fans are going to do on Sundays this year. I hope it's not watch football, especially if they help. Look, you ought to be rooting for this healthcare bill to fail if you're a New York Jets fan and you plan on watching their football team this year, because they're going to fucking suck, let me tell you. Okay? And there's no doubt that Colin Kaepernick can help them. None. Zero. But your owner happens to be the ambassador for the new president. And the new president just happened to say teams are scared to sign Kaepernick to him. And we all have to keep walking around here like we don't remember this shit, and like we got blindfolds on and we got headphones on and don't hear anything. Like, it's amazing how we know. Like, how can you look at the objective facts going on with Kaepernick and not conclude that not only is he being blackballed, but it's actually being coordinated. You got some coaches, man. Hugh Jackson said they didn't even consider Colin Kaepernick. Do you know how rare that is to not even consider a player? Even if it's a quick consideration, almost every time, like you always hear in the offseason, oh, we'll leave no stone unturned. We're going to look at every possible scenario to try to help our team. Isn't that what you hear every offseason? But you trying to tell me a guy, when you don't have a quarterback, if you're Cleveland, and there's one available, you didn't even have a conversation with him about him with your GM? Nothing. Just a quick phone call say, what about Colin? No, we're going to go in a different direction. Okay, cool. He said they hadn't even considered him. And then guess what? The Detroit Lions head coach said the same thing. So this is something you never hear, but 2 different head coaches have told you they didn't even consider him. I just don't know how you square that with him not getting blackballed. Hey, maybe you're one of those people who wanted him to be blackballed. Cool. Then go ahead and say that. Okay? If you are proud that he's being blackballed, stand on your soapbox, beat your chest and say that. But don't hide behind this weak ass bullshit that he's not good enough or that he's asking for too much money or he's this or he's that, because we all know it's bullshit. Let's have a real conversation and let's stop playing around, because I, for one, I'm tired. I'm really tired of still having people tweet me talking about he's not a good football player. That's bullshit, and everybody knows it at this point.
You're right, and it's one thing. If you don't want to sign him, whatever, that's fine. You got your reasons. Da da da. Let's be honest about why he's not signed. The owner of the Giants was honest. Let's have the rest of the league be honest, so we get this lawsuit cracking, so we get some money in his pockets. That's where I stand on it. You think the NFLPA will sue?
I think they'll have to. But again, Colin Kaepernick will have to authorize them to do that. They can't just do it on their own. And that's really part of the problem here too. Now I understand, like, Colin Kaepernick is in a no-win situation. He hasn't said a word really this offseason. If you look, it's always somebody trying to speak for him. Okay? And so that has allowed people to fill the void with all this crap. Oh, he's asking for too much. He hadn't even talked to a team. But, you know, people had fans out here think he was asking for $9 million a year. He don't want to be a backup. Again, everybody's buying a hook, line, and sinker. But with Colin not filling the void with his own voice, that allows some of these people to try to make it seem like they believe this stuff. Right? But on the other hand, as soon as he does an interview, what everybody going to say? See, I told you he was a distraction. Look at him. He's on TV. Yeah. He can't win. And so, you know, that's the part that I wonder about, if he's even going to ask them or allow them to do that. I imagine the PA wants to do it right now. Because remember now, the PA found evidence of collusion, that the NFL had colluded before the lockout. But unfortunately, they didn't find the evidence until the players had already approved the new CBA. And so the owner said, well, yeah, we did collude it. You got us red-handed. But if y'all don't sign the CBA right now, we're going to go back to the lockout, and these guys about to miss game checks. But it was like, it was no doubt, like it wasn't a rumor or nothing like that. It was a fact that all parties acknowledged that the NFL admitted, yeah, you caught us colluding on this issue. So I imagine the NFLPA wants some get back on that issue in the first place. But they're going to have to wait and see if Colin Kaepernick wants to pursue it, because, you know, after everything he's been through, he may not. You just never know.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I'm interested to see what happens next, and I do hope he gives that authorization, because I want to see discovery on this. I want to see this happen. I want this conversation to get louder, because I'm just afraid that if he doesn't fight, it goes away quietly, and that pisses me off to no end. Thank you for coming on today, Stephen White. SGW94 on Twitter. You know all the stuff from SB Nation. Before I let you go, when's it gonna stop, Steve? When's Atlanta trolling gonna stop? I need an end date.
You gotta pray. You gotta pray that Golden State loses after going up 3-1 again. Nobody will even mention Atlanta if that happens. Right now, you gotta be either pulling for them or pulling for Nashville, which ought to be pulling for Nashville anyway. I'm pulling for them. So if they can come back and beat the Penguins, then everybody just figured, you know, this was just a bad year for teams being up.
Steve, I'm not talking about
that was all time.
About you, Steve.
But here's the thing. This is what you don't understand. I'm just as pissed off as you are. I'm not even a Falcons fan.
I don't think you're just as pissed off as I am.
I hate bad football. Hate it. I hate it with a passion. And you know what I hate even more than that? I hate it when people won't actually admit bad football happened. Like, most NFL media defers to head coaches. They are very afraid to, and I'm not talking about like, shock jocks or radio hosts, those guys traffic in, being over the top. I'm talking about NFL media. People who know football are loath to second guess a head coach, even when it's obvious that they screwed up. There is no good reason for not running the football at least twice there. Okay, sure, you tried to get them the first time, okay, with a pass. You got to run the football now at the end. And so that had me so, and then, of course, they messed up my prediction in the first place. If they just run the football and kick a field goal there, for 2 years in a row, my Super Bowl prediction would have went off perfectly, right? And everybody would be like, oh, Steve White is the greatest. So I promise you, I'm not quite as pissed off as you about it, but it's close.
Okay.
I'm just telling you. I might have been on ESPN by now if y'all had won that game. You don't even understand.
All I know is about to.
Nobody predicted the game was going that way except for me that I know of. They said Atlanta was going to outscore them. Nobody I know of believed it.
First of all, I said it. Second of all I know is.
I mean, you said they were going to win. Did you say they were going to blow them out, though? I said they were going to blow them out.
I was too scared in my Atlanta heart to say that, but I said we would win by 10.
No, I said they were going to blow them out. I said they were going to blow their doors off.
Twice a month, I wake up to tweets at DPalm66. You see this? And a link to some bullshit. I need.
No, but listen. When I send you that, what is it usually? It's people that don't want to admit the truth. Like the whole, or like everybody was saying, oh, well, Dan Quinn never second guessed the offense coordinator. So he couldn't have did anything about it in the first place. I'm pissed off at the head coach as much as anybody. He should have stopped that after the first time. And so when I see you that stuff, I'm telling you, I'm not sending it to mess with you. Half the time you don't see no LOLs on there. I'm sitting because I'm like, I'm pissed off too.
And now we got Sarkisian hanging out with them boys in Buckhead. I'm nervous. I don't know.
Hey man, it don't look. Listen, I thought the Panthers were going to be that team to break the curse, the loser and Super Bowl team, end up having that terrible season the year after. I really thought the Panthers were built to withstand that. Now, I think y'all are too. But last year taught me, I don't know, man, it's going to be it might be a rough one for y'all this year.
I'm nervous. I look at Sarkisian's other works with how he uses big receivers, and I'm ready for a lot of 8-yard Julio gains, and I'm pretty upset about it. Look, dude, he just runs 3-step. Like, okay, I'm not gonna do this today, but he'll.
The good thing is, Julio can take anything to the house.
Like,
so that's
if they're gonna sit and cover, if they're gonna sit and
why
low
make
too,
that hard?
because 3 steps coming.
Yeah, he's gonna have to take a lot of punishment. But hey, maybe he'll adjust his personnel.
Anyway, this has been your Decision Podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at DPalm66. Follow the show on Twitter at UDPod. Our guest again was Stephen White. Follow him on Twitter at SGW94. Follow the entire MTR network at the MTR network. Make sure you follow all our podcasts. Make sure you subscribe in the iTunes store. Leave that 5-star review. Go to the store. Buy some merch. Say with your chest how much you love us, or maybe a tasteful mug. That was your show. This is your outro. It will not be Rocky Top. See you next week.